Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to episode 115 of the Health Oddity podcast. We are joined by another fantastic guest today, an international guest who I will introduce you to in a minute. Some of you will already know because I've mentioned her a couple of times in previous episodes. But first of all, I will introduce the usual co-host for today, Mr. Peter Lant. How are you doing, Peter?
I'm doing very well. Very well, considering I may or may not have COVID. I'm doing all right, actually.
Well, you have had a haircut as well.
I have had a haircut, yes.
Yeah.
But so my Mrs. Sean's had COVID. She works in the school, so she's had COVID and brought it home with her, which is always nice. But yeah, I've touch wood. This was over a week ago, so I'm feeling fine, so that's good. But I'm very excited for this because we've already decided that I'm going to get a muscle up based on the conversation we had just before we started recording. So this is fantastic.
Well, we actually
for all the listeners out there, we've already basically done a podcast episode before we even started.
And we are joined today all the way from I think Vancouver in British Columbia in Canada. Meghan Callaway. How are you doing, Meghan?
I'm good. How about you guys? Even though we've already been chatting off air.
As you know, we're very well.
Yeah, we're very, very good, thank you. Yeah, it's great. And I'd said to Meghan when she first came on that we've had sort of three guests in quick succession, three female guests of all very different sort of facets or focuses within fitness and health and strength. But I think it's really, really good for everybody to listen to, but especially the female listeners to listen to and to have. You know, we had Rebecca Rouse on a few weeks ago, kind of Olympic weightlifting and kettlebells and that sort of thing. And then we recently obviously had Donna Moore on, 3 times world's strongest woman. And then today we've got Meghan, who we will introduce you to properly in a minute. And you know, a totally different side of fitness and totally different attributes to the previous 2 guests. So I think that's really, really powerful. Meghan, I've been following you for quite a while online, and I know lots of people do. You've got a fantastic presence on Instagram with everything you do. You are the author of the Ultimate Pull-Up Program, the Ultimate Push-Up Program, and the fairly recent, I think, Ultimate Pistol Squat Program as well. You've been featured in lots of publications, including the New York Times. So yeah, it's just fantastic to have you on. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your origin story, I suppose, really, like how you got involved in what you do now, start from as far back as you want, because I really find that for me personally, anyway, I love hearing, where people come from, what their backgrounds are and what's kind of led them to be where they are now. So if you could kind of let us and our listeners know, that would be great.
Absolutely. So I've been around for a while. I'll date myself. I've been coaching now for over 19 years. I started out probably like most people pretty much working with everybody. As I got older, as I learned and grew and evolved as a coach, I kind of figured out the people I thought I would be the best fit for. Now the type of people I work with, I work with general population, I work with athletes, I now work with a lot of calisthenics athletes. I think I need more coffee. The people who tend to seek me out are people who are really interested in the learning versus just the doing. They want to achieve the results, but they also want to understand how and why. And so I'm not saying all coaches are like this, because they of course aren't, but I find in the earlier days, a lot of coaches are largely cheerleaders. I was more of a cheerleader when I started out. I obviously didn't know as much as I know now, but I think I've evolved a lot in terms of being able to truly help people, truly work with people who are the best fit. Now I am quite open about not working with people if I don't think I will be able to help them. In my earlier days, and I'm sure a lot of coaches can relate to this, you pretty much work with everybody. You don't say no. So you probably won't be the most helpful all the time. So that was kind of a long-winded way of saying I've been around for a while. I've made a lot of mistakes. I think I've grown as a coach. I consider myself an athlete. I played competitive soccer for 27 years. When I was really young, I played baseball and ice hockey on guys' teams. Now I don't play any team sports, but I consider myself a calisthenics athlete. I'm having a hard time saying that word today for whatever reason.
Well, it's only 8 a.m., isn't it, where you are? So
it's so early right now. Coffee will be my friend for this. So I consider myself an athlete. I always will be, and I'm super passionate about my own training. I'm passionate about helping people find the joy in their own training, feeling empowered, versus just fixating on the end results without really caring about the process, and also not finding the joy and empowerment in their training.
So I've been thinking about and talking about this a lot recently about, people go for the end goal and the big dopamine hit when you get the end goal and everything, and then you go, okay, what next? But it's getting the dopamine hit from the session, from the process. That is what I think you're trying to say there, is just like, just enjoy the process. If you can enjoy the process, you're going to get the goal, no problem.
And also people are so, sorry, I interrupted you. People
fine.
are so obsessed with the end result that they don't enjoy the process. But also me, I'll use myself as an example. When I was learning muscle ups, I could not do them. And then of course you think end goal, muscle up. I can't do it. Therefore my training is useless. And I wasn't enjoying myself, or at least I was enjoying myself, but I was getting very frustrated.
Yeah.
So rather than thinking about getting that muscle up, I was focusing on the steps to getting that muscle up. Each time I trained, I was focusing on mastering certain steps and trying to get a little better each time. That way I was enjoying the process. I was getting a lot farther, and I was feeling a lot more empowered. I was working with a coach at the time when I first decided I wanted to learn muscle ups. And he would even tell me all the time how tough I was being on myself. Because athletes get this, and it can even apply to non-athletic endeavors, like regular life stuff. If you don't achieve what you want to achieve right away, you might be really tough on yourself. And I was being unreasonably tough on myself. And he kind of told me to lighten up. That made a difference too.
What I'm going to do, I haven't brought this out for a while, but this is what we call the acronym hammer, which I usually, if a guest uses an acronym, I'll usually hold this up and we'll talk about the acronym. And I'm just aware that many of our listeners possibly won't know what a muscle up is. And before we go too deep into that, can you just explain, Meghan, what a muscle up is, just for the people who are listening who might not know?
So probably the best way to describe it is you do a pull-up, but rather than stopping when your collarbone, some people just get their chin to the bar, rather than stopping when the collarbone or chin is at bar level, you're going to carry over the bar into a press. So it almost combines a high pull-up with a tricep press. And then on the way down, it's the reverse. You do the dip and then you lower.
So you end up at the top of the bar. You're well above the bar. Kind of your hips are in line with the bar, and then your arms are locked out, and your body is totally above the bar. Yeah, at the top. Yeah.
I like what Meghan said there about pull-ups. Like when you get to your collarbone, or sometimes your neck, there'll be a lot of people who are listening like at eye level. They get into that, and they'll be like, and then you like try and get your chin over the wall. That's a pull-up, and then the muscle up goes.
I tell people to keep their chin down. A lot of people it's like a chin, literally a chin up.
Yeah.
Instead of actually pulling up, they just stick their chin up and reach up with their chin.
Yeah.
And they forget to complete the movement with the arms and the shoulder blades, so they're not using as much back.
So in terms of your training, Meghan, you had a competitive soccer background for 27 years, I think you said.
Yeah.
And at what stage how old were you when you kind of decided to either engage in more strength training, or were you strength training throughout your sort of soccer career as well? And then when did you, if you did, transition from more of a conventional, traditional strength training using a lot of exterior load and barbells or kettlebells or dumbbells or whatever, more into this kind of calisthenics and body weight focus?
So I started strength training at about age 16. I probably did not start strength training well until about age 30. I'm 42 now, so I probably started strength training well when I was just over 30. And so with my own training, even now, I don't just do body weight stuff. I share more of the body weight stuff, but I do a lot of stuff, dumbbells. When I'm at the gym, I will use obviously barbell, trap bar. So I have more of a hybrid approach to my training. It's not just calisthenics, like just body weight stuff. And my entire life, I've been doing this hybrid approach to training. But now the body weight stuff I'm doing now is far more advanced.
It's interesting because we had a lady on called Kelly Manzoni she's from America as well. I'm terrible with.
Was she in Minnesota?
Minnesota, yes, yeah. Minnesota. And she does a lot of like Indian clubs and mace and more of the kind of circular strength stuff. And if you looked at her Instagram, that's predominantly what she has. But when we actually spoke to her, she said, oh, I also do, when I go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, I do still do compound lifts and other strength stuff. And like you say, it's interesting to speak to you, because like you say, if someone was just looking at your Instagram, because it's the stuff that you share more, they might think, oh, well, Meghan just does all of that, but you also have more of a kind of conventional sort of strength training side as well when you go to the gym, but you just don't sort of share that. Yeah.
I haven't been, since the pandemic started, I actually have not been in a gym since March of 2020. I built a really, really good home gym, not really intentionally. It just kind of kept growing every week. So I have pretty heavy dumbbells. I have 50-pound dumbbells. I have a lot of other equipment where I can do Nordic curls, hip thrusts. You've seen my parallel bars. I have a lot of different equipment. So I do plan on going back to the gym at some point, but just with everything I have at my house, my training, I have actually gotten a lot stronger in the past 2 years without touching a barbell or the trap bar. So yeah. I am excited to get back to doing some of those exercises, because I think I've really prioritized the unilateral training with my lower body. And I can do now, no problem, single leg deadlifts with 100 pounds, higher rep, negative tempo, perfect control, skater squats, super heavy. So I think once I go back to the heavier lifting with the barbell and the trap bar, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. And I think that, so when did you, I know obviously the things that's probably most, like you say, things on Instagram, they go on Instagram, they're very impressive to look at, and they're very impressive when you actually know what's going on as well. But a lot of the training, I'd imagine, that you do, we talk about it when we had Dan John and things on here before, that the majority of training that builds up to get you to that is far more kind of rudimentary and kind of punching the clock and basic. And then it's the flashy stuff that everyone recognizes and remembers and is blown away by. But it's kind of all the foundations that you build before you get to the flashy stuff.
I talk about, yes, with my own training, with my clients' training, most of what we do and most of what I do is so fundamental. And then because I now own the fundamentals and I'm working on the fundamentals every single day, that has allowed me to do the more advanced stuff. And I consider the advanced stuff as just additional layers to the fundamental training. And most of the innovative stuff I do, it makes sense. I'm not just if something is innovative, it's not being innovative just for the sake of it. There's a rhyme and a reason, and it's usually just adding a slight layer to something more fundamental.
Yeah. It's funny because you get this sort of thing, don't you? Because I mean, I know what James is saying about, I mean, I follow you on Instagram as well. Yeah. And it's great watching you do the muscle ups with the plates on your legs and all that sort of stuff, which is just ridiculous. But a lot of the stuff I like is like, do this instead of sit-ups, do this instead of sit-ups. There's a lot of that. Because like people get stuck, don't they? Like, oh, I'll just do a load of sit-ups, and they don't get anything from it, and they're not really thinking about the progressions that they could do with it and everything like that. and it's usually because they want a six pack or something like that. And it's like, well, that doesn't even work anyway. But the whole thing of do this, and it actually involves your whole body, and then involves kind of like the cross crawl patterns and all of that sort of stuff, the cross body patterns and what have you. So it's really interesting to see that. And then, like you say, you get the like you say, the cool stuff or the circus skills, which they basically are, aren't they? Like, you know, it's kind of that comes from all those fundamentals that get you there. And people want to just be able to do that thing straight away, don't they, without all the stuff beforehand. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess there isn't a question in there. I was just making an observation of your stuff on Instagram, which is brilliant. And it's kind of like it's a good message to get across to people as well, of just like, you know, you work yourself on all of that stuff, and then it's interspersed with the odd kind of cool move on Instagram to go like, well, here's what it builds towards, you know.
My lower body training is so fundamental, and I share more stuff in my stories than I do on my page. The reason I don't share as much lower body stuff, I hate filming during my own workouts. It adds so much time, and I don't have the time or the patience for that.
Yeah.
So I do that sometimes. Sometimes in my story, I'll share my entire workout so people can see what I do. And close to 100% of my lower body work is stuff with dumbbells. I do a lot of Nordic curls. I do a lot of single leg hamstring slide outs. It's so boring, so fundamental, but it works. My upper body, the way I train, just based on my own, because the calisthenics I do, it's so intense, and the workouts also do take really long. For a lot of people, I recommend doing full body workouts, but for myself, I do 2 per week upper body calisthenics with some core, and then 2 full lower body with some core. And then I love cardio as well. I was just riding my bike before I got on here with you guys. So it is a very, very hybrid approach, but the calisthenics I do, now that I'm awake, or I'm at least waking up, I can say that word properly now.
I noticed you said bodyweight earlier.
I did. I was avoiding saying the word. So that style of training, I allow a lot more room for experimenting, for being innovative. It's a lot less regimented. My lower body work, it's very scripted, and I know exactly what I'm doing every single time I train.
I said to one of my coaches actually today, I was at the gym, and I said to him that I was having you on the podcast this afternoon, and I said, oh, make sure, you know, have a look and follow her and all the rest of it. Because I said all the stuff that you do with, you know, things like valve slides and resistance bands and foam rollers, and where you do your, you know, your kind of reverse hypers on the sofa, and you do all these great kind of accessory movements, I suppose, you know, but in a really nice way that doesn't require, like you say, you train at home 100% really and in your garden, you know, the rig you've got outside, you train for the last 2 years there. So, and we've tried to move away from machines and things in the gym. So, but we've got obviously things like valve slides and the bands and pull-up bars and Olympic, you know, and rings and all that sort of stuff. So to be able to see you, the way that you actually put movements together, and like you say, it's really innovative and really inventive, isn't it? And I think that's something that comes across. You're not in a gym. You can't just go over to a hamstring curl or, you know, all these machines that people have, or cable machines and things. So the use of bands, is that something you've done for a long time, using bands and things for your training as well?
I stepped it up March 2020 when we could not go to the gym. Nobody was going to the gym for quite a while here. So my brain just started going into overdrive, coming up with ideas, stuff people could do at home, stuff people of all fitness levels could do at home, and stuff that was very, very challenging, exciting, and effective. So now, my own training, I use some bands, but the majority of the training I do for my lower body, heavy weights, I do use sliders a fair amount. Upper body, my training, I share a lot of stuff on social media that is more accessible to a lot of people. So a lot of the stuff I do is quite advanced I know, at least for the time being, a lot of people can't do that. So I do limit what I share of my own training, particularly the calisthenics. But I do use some bands. I love sliders. I love, particularly for the hamstrings.
I saw the one that you were doing the other day. I've not tried it myself because I almost could feel myself cramping just watching it. But the one,
I know the one. I know the one.
That was with a band, and you were kind of in a half kneeling position, and you had the band around the back ankle, and you were curling the heel towards your bum, and you could literally see your hamstring operating like it is, like a leg bicep. And it was just such a small movement, and I thought, oh god, that looks really good.
The funny thing with that, of course, when I tried it for the first time, I completely jumped the gun, and I used a bit. Are you talking the one where I was going over the kettlebell, or the one where it was the isometric hold? Because I've shared two.
Yeah, no, I saw the one where you were in a half kneeling position. I think hands may have been against the wall, and you had the thin power band on the back ankle, just doing like a curl up. You were curling the heel towards your bum, and you could see that the hamstring, like I say, like a leg bicep, actually it just looked really, really good. But
it's funny because the first time I tried that, of course, I grabbed a band with way too much resistance.
Yeah.
So I tried it, and I could barely lift my heel off, or lift my foot off the ground. So I was like, whoa, this is awful. And then I had to keep downgrading. And then finally I found a band. It has very little tension. You do not need a lot of tension for it to humble the heck out of you.
Yeah.
I love it when we talk to people like you, because you clearly know what you're doing. You know, you've got a lot of followers on Instagram. You're very strong. And you still do the same as everyone else does. And you go, I went and grabbed the biggest one I could.
In my defense,
you start at the top and move your way down.
At least in my defense, it was the medium resistance I grabbed.
Okay.
But it was still, I had to go 3 levels lower than the one that I picked.
Yeah, but it's so funny because we all preach like start low and build your way up. Yeah. But then, and people think they do that. But you can see it in your clients and stuff where their kind of level is. So you know roughly where the middle is and all of this. So you know where to begin or where they're at right now. Yeah. But then I just find this really interesting in human psychology of like when you look at someone else, you can see where they're at. When you look at yourself, you always think you're a bit further on. And it doesn't matter if you're a trainer or not. It's like 100% of the time that people pick the wrong thing. So Paul talks about this a lot. They either go for something ridiculously heavy or ridiculously light, and it's never quite the sweet spot, is it? So yeah, I think that's brilliant.
I'm usually fairly realistic with weight, but bands are very deceiving.
Yeah.
The bands are what get me.
Yeah, because you just don't know, and especially like because hamstring and hamstring kind of isolation and really focused work is especially like you say with bands or with valve slides or with Bodyweight or like with TRX or anything like that. You can just cramp straight away, can't you? Almost, we'll just go too far. Is that why I just wondered what you just said there? The kind of gist of the conversation, is that maybe why sometimes you don't share the more advanced or the calisthenic stuff that you maybe do yourself, because you know that people will watch it and then just try and do it themselves and potentially hurt themselves or
necessarily.
No?
My audience, so I have a rule for my social media. Generally 80% plus of what I share, I'm trying to give value, I'm trying to help people, and it's for the people who follow me. 10 to 20% of what I share is purely for me. And it's like, okay, I'm going to share this for myself, maybe for accountability. Maybe it is inspiring somebody, I'm not sure, but it's more for my own benefit in terms of pushing me. So that's largely why I don't share a lot of the more like muscle ups, for example, because I know most of my audience isn't really interested in that.
So we've mentioned muscle ups a couple of times, and we were talking about the programs that you've kind of written in the past, and I think you said that the thing that most people want to talk to you about or interested in is pull-ups, because you wrote the Ultimate Pull-Up Program. And I think you said, was that about 5 years ago now?
2017, my 5-year anniversary of the program's release was last week.
Yeah. So, but still, that's one of the most popular things that you've done, and you know, kind of, I suppose you're almost most known for, and people want to talk to you about. So, I suppose one question then is in terms of pull-ups, and chin-ups, and the whole kind of spectrum of that vertical kind of body weight pull. Is that something that you've always been able to do from a young age, or is that something that you had to build up to? And what's the not the fascination with it, but what's the appeal of it for you? And do you think why are people so interested in that as a kind of an exercise?
I had been training pull-ups. I started training them in my early 20s. I was in a pretty bad car accident when I was 28, and it kind of stopped my training, or at least held me back for 5 years until somebody could tell me what was causing all the issues I was having. So to answer your question, I could do them relatively quickly when I first started, but I wasn't necessarily doing them very well. And I have found some before, in quotations, before videos of myself doing pull-ups. And I was now, like, if I were critiquing my form, I would have a lot to say.
Okay.
And I think pull-ups for myself, but for a lot of people, I think there's something really cool about pulling your body up. I don't know what it is. Push-ups, that was a really shitty demo, push-up demo in my chair. But people love push-ups. People are into push-ups as well, but there's something really cool and fascinating about pulling the body up. And thinking about pulling yourself up over a fence, pulling yourself up, if you had to, into a window in a building. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's something that fascinates a lot of people.
And I think it's kind of, I mean, from training, God, going back probably 20 years ago or something now in gyms, more like bodybuilding gyms, powerlifting type gyms, lots of people, they train their back, and they, the lat pull down, people sit on the lat pull down. They can do huge weights, and they can put the whole stack on a lat pull down and kind of lean back and lift. But very few people back then, and still now, I'm sure, can do pull-ups well, or even chin-ups, or even just from a proper dead hang position, and come up. It's something that kind of eludes most people. And why do you think that is? Is it like body composition, and the majority of people now are, carrying more weight potentially than that? It's obviously going to make it more difficult. Is it strength? Is it technique? Is it a combination of all three? What do you find?
I think technique for one, but even what you said about the lat pull down machine, that is such a great example, because with pull-ups, your entire body needs to be involved. I like to coach them where people, I don't call it a full hollow body, because that's your little more art. I almost call it more of a slight hollow body position. So you want to maintain the tension around the torso, spine, hips, glutes, legs, your entire body. Otherwise, you're going to be more prone to pulling dead weight, and you're going to be more prone to swinging, which if you're swinging, as we were talking about off air, for the muscle up, you might want a slight swing, but for the pull up, if you have a huge swing, your path to the bar is going to be a lot longer and less efficient. So people, they make a mistake of considering, they treat the pull up purely as an upper body exercise, and they think about what's going on from the chest up, and they neglect what is going on from the chest down. So the entire body needs to be working as one for most people to be able to do them successfully, or for at least your form to be good. And to clarify, for the muscle up, you don't want a massive swing, but you, as we were talking about why Pete, he might be struggling with the muscle up, is because he's not swinging at all. He's traveling completely vertically, so the bar is blocking him. He's doing a high pull-up, which is good for the pull-up, but not for the muscle up.
This is true. And I've discovered that about 20 minutes ago in that chat. It's great though. I love that, because it's like, it is these tiny little technique shifts that you don't think about. And like, I've been doing pull-ups for years and what have you, and I've got better at them, because the thing with pull-ups is, I always find, trying to get people to do them, like you say, people think about the upper body upwards. So they end up in a dead hang and then trying to kind of move from that. And it's actually, if you just pull your body up through, I'm doing this on the video, by the way, you won't be able to see this if you're listening on Spotify, but you pull your body through and then it's everything that happens kind of like shoulder blades and below, isn't it? And then, and I think Dan John always says pull-ups are the best ab exercise you can do, especially if you've got a weight on below as well. So yeah.
Yeah, James shared a really cool video today, the pull-ups holding the weight. That I love them, and I love doing the muscle ups like that, because if you do not have the tension in the body positioning, the weight will drop. So I'm not saying that people who can't do pull-ups should hold the weight and try to do pull-ups, of course, but it is a great learning tool too for people who can already do pull-ups.
Yeah.
And to answer your question as well, technique for pull-ups is huge. A lot of people, for one, they think about just pulling their body up to the bar. If anything, I like to think the reverse. You want to pull the bar down to you.
Yeah.
And you want to think about driving the elbows in and down, driving the shoulder blades in and down. That's going to help you use more back versus having the shoulders shoot up towards the ears. And I almost liken it, you know, when you watch people doing pull-ups and they don't have the tension and almost like the elasticity before they pull and they jerk. It's a very snappy, jerky movement. I almost liken that to when people deadlift off the floor and they don't take the slack out of the bar. So they're jerking the bar off the floor.
Yeah.
Same with the pull-up. Pull the bar down to you. You want to remove the slack from the bar. It makes it so much easier. And a lot of people who think about pulling up, they don't get the tension and they pull with their arms a lot more than using the muscles in the back. And they don't have the scapular position, tension in the right areas, and they might be more prone to struggling. So that would be a technique issue as well.
Does that mean we need to change the name of the exercise? Because it's kind of, it's called a pull-up, isn't it? It's a pull-up, but you don't think of pulling up, you think of pulling down. That's interesting, though, what you just said about the slack thing there on a deadlift or on a pull-up. Is I remember Fabio from Strong First talking about this, about a car. So if your car goes into a ditch and you get a rope and you try to pull the car out of the ditch, right? You're gonna get the rope and get tension in the rope first, and then go to pull. Because if there's no tension in the rope, you're gonna walk off with the rope. I'm doing this for the video again, but I'll try and explain it as best I can. You're gonna walk off with a rope and it's slack, and then what's gonna happen is the tension's gonna come into the rope, and that's gonna pull you back. Exactly. And then you're gonna try and pull the car. So it's the same thing. And this is when people say, I get sore elbows doing pull-ups. And it's like, that's going to be exactly why, because that's where most of the stress is going, because you're trying to out-grip your way through it as well. Because if you can't get the tension through the rest of your body, you're going to grip harder. And then that just puts so much force on your forearms and elbows. And that's when people start to get tendonitis from it. And then they go, oh, can't do pull-ups anymore because they're bad for you, because they hurt my elbows. And it's like, yeah, it's the same with everything, isn't it? It's like, you know, squats hurt my knees, pull-ups hurt my elbows, all that sort of stuff. It's like, no, the way you do it, that's another Dan John thing, isn't it? No, the way you do pull-ups hurts your elbows, the way you do squats hurts your knees. So yeah, that's really
bad form or too much volume. And a lot of the time the people aren't able to do the volume. So it pretty much falls back on the bad form.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you have, obviously, because I don't know what the percentage is, it would be a total guess, but I'll have a guess anyway. But I'd imagine that like
make it up. Percentages are made up, and rounded up to 5 as well.
I'd make it up. Definitely less than 1% of the population of men can do like one good pull-up. Certainly in this country, I would say. What is that true? Just made it up. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. No.
Is that actually a real number, or is that real?
It's real because I just said it, but it's made up. But no, I would think because I'm just thinking out of 100 men in this country across all ages, you know, from teenagers to men to adults to OAPs, whatever. There's very, very few people who, a lot of people would say, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do a pull up, or a chin up even. But when they actually were to hang and to try and do it, and that's just from, you know, I've been like you say, you've been doing this for 19 years coaching. I've been about 25 years now, and I know the number of people that I've seen over 25 years, men who can do a good pull-up is tiny, you know, and probably less than 1 in 100. But for women, it's even less than that, I would imagine. And that's not saying they can't do it, but possibly they've never tried to do it, or they've never been taught to do it properly. Do you have a lot of women who you've helped to do pull-ups through your coaching and things? Because there is a thing, isn't there, that a lot of women say, oh, women can't do pull-ups, or women find pull-ups very hard because of whatever reason or excuse or justification they might come up with. I mean, what have you come across over all your time coaching?
Most people, particularly women, when they come to me, not so much now, because the people who seek me out are very different from the people I was working with before. A lot of people have been led to believe that they cannot do pull-ups. And of course, maybe they have not tried, or they've tried and they didn't have the form down. If you try to do the pull-ups or try to do pull-ups and your form isn't good, they're going to feel really tough or impossible. So sometimes somebody might come to me, couldn't do a single pull-up. They were strong enough, but you could tell it was a form thing. They might get a pull-up in the first session. Other people, they might need to work on the strength and the technique. So it will, of course, take them longer. And of course, somebody might not get it's not very normal for somebody to get a pull-up in one session. But the people who have the strength, who lack the form, it's usually a lot faster. So I have helped hundreds of people. My pull-up program has helped thousands of people of all genders, backgrounds, ages, people up to 75 years old. One woman, it was unfortunate. She 80 years old, and she could do pull-ups. And we were going to work together, and there ended up being just when she filled out her PAR-Q form, there was a medical issue and she was not given clearance. And of course, I'm not, obviously, so we couldn't work together. But people in their 80s can sometimes do pull-ups.
Yeah.
I've also worked with people in their late teens who could not. Men in their teens, male athletes, high-level athletes could not do them. So it depends. I don't know if you guys heard, probably not. There was an NHL draft pick. I forget. He was, I believe, in the top 3. And he might have even been number 1 because it ended up being a huge story. He could not do a single pull-up in the draft combine.
Okay.
He was the number 3rd overall pick. I forget.
Yeah.
So the story was, I won't name him, even though it was quite a public story. Top NHL draft pick could not do a single pull-up. And so he trained for them. And the following year, he could do a lot. He could do quite a few of them.
Yeah.
So people of all backgrounds, people.
Because that's where he could just turn around and say, that's where he could just turn around and say, like, I'm just too big.
I'm just going to use the acronym HAMMER because you're in Canada. NHL is the National Hockey League, isn't it?
Yes, National Hockey League.
Okay, good. Okay. So, I mean, from your experience, because you work with a lot of people who are interested in doing pull-ups, and you help do pull-ups, and you, like you say, probably thousands of people have you've helped, male, female, from around the world on your programs do pull-ups. Maybe you have a different perspective than me. Did you think that when I said probably less than 1 in 100 men can do a pull-up, did you think that was too low or too high, or did you agree with what I said there? I don't know. I couldn't tell.
I'd definitely say too low. I'd say probably, and again, this is probably not remote.
We're making statistics up. Yeah.
We're going to have to put a lot of fact checks in the
yes.
show notes, aren't we?
And of course, they'll all be proven wrong.
Yeah.
I would say,
yeah,
at least I'd say 10%.
Okay. So 10% of men could do a pull-up. Okay.
Possibly more. A perfect pull-up, maybe 10%.
What I reckon what would be interesting is how many people think they can't. So the percentage of people who can or can't do them, right? Say there's 10% who can do it. But how many people would be able to do it with just like a few a one coaching session on techniques, say? I mean, I know one coaching session isn't enough, but say you did a technique thing with them on one coaching session and they got it and they understood it and then said, right, I'm going to apply that. how much that would go up if like, you know, it just
Or
just
probably if they bought Meghan's program and then went through the no, I'm being serious, because I'm going to say if they bought Meghan's program and because I'm sure that I know Nikki, who's a member of my team, has bought your program, and I know that if you buy the program, it's not just going to be day one you're doing pull-ups, is it? It's going to be all the, like you say, the foundational kind of the building up, the understanding it, the layering of skills, and then getting up there. So if people, you know, start from the start and learn it properly, then I'm sure. I do think that from my experience, a lot of people, it's a weight thing as well, in terms of in this country. I don't know what, I know America's quite bad. I don't really know what Canada's like, but the UK has a very, I mean, you said something the other day, Pete, was it 68% of
68% of men? I know the stats for men. I don't know
are overweight or obese,
overweight or obese.
Yeah.
And the stat for obesity, it was 14% in 1993, and it's like 28% now. It's doubled.
Yeah. So I find that a lot of people like who are very strong doing like, because you've got like obviously like absolute strength, haven't you? Something like who can lift the most in a deadlift. And then, you know, because the body weight calisthenics stuff is a lot more about, well, it's body weight and it's relative strength, isn't it? Strength relating to your body size and things like that. And I'm sure that, because I know people who train at my place who are very, very, very strong, and they're much, much, much stronger than me. But because they're maybe, you know, 10 kilos, 15 kilos, 20 kilos overweight, or carrying, you know, that much additional, say, they find, you know, even to do one chin up, you know, is incredibly hard because they're maybe 30 kilos heavier than me, you know. So I think that's quite a big thing as well for people. But then again, if people are reaching out to you, Meghan, to learn how to do more calisthenics, like the pull-ups, the press-ups and the pistol squats, they're probably, are they a bit more advanced? Are the people who come to you a bit more, they're already on a kind of journey and a path, and they're already kind of part way there? Is that fair to say?
Generally, the people who seek me out aren't complete beginners in terms of their training, but the age varies, the background varies. For instance, I have a client, she's in her 60s, and she bought the parallel bars that I have. She wants to be able to do muscle ups. So I've been teaching her false grip pull-ups. She can already do pull-ups really well, and she has rings in her house, but she's been doing dips on the bars. She's been doing false grip pull-ups. Do you know what a crow pose is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she's been doing the crow pose. Do you know what a forearm stand is?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like for people who are listening and not watching.
Yeah.
And I can't demo it out right here from my chair. But you're essentially in a handstand position, but you're balancing on your forearms. She can do that. So that's just an example of one of my online clients. Another online client, you would technically have considered, in quotations, more advanced, but she had a tougher time, or at least more advanced off the bat. She was having a tougher time learning some of the more advanced moves that people who might have been at a lower level were getting. It depends. People learn at different rates. I have a very diverse clientele, which is awesome. It makes my job so fun.
What would you
say? I do
say?
train a lot of men too. I should say that. I train people of all genders. Yeah.
I was just going to ask, Meghan, in terms of your what you do, your business, and the way that you operate, you are very accomplished and very prolific online, through Instagram and then through your online programs and things. Do you do any kind of face-to-face coaching with people in your kind of location where you are, or is most of your work done online? And do you have many people that you do coach one-to-one even online, or do most people buy your programs and learn that way? I mean, what's the kind of mix for you and the way that you operate?
So for 17 and a half years, I was doing in person. For the first 14 and a half years of my career, I was exclusively in person full time. after 14 and a half years, it became a blend of in-person and online. And for the past 2 and a bit years, I've been 100% online. And I do work with people one-on-one online as well. So it's not just my programs.
Oh, so actually now everything is done online. You operate from home and from and then you can train. You do everything at home as well there. So that's how you operate now.
For right now. And eventually I do plan on traveling more, doing workshops, conferences, all that. But right now,
have you been over to the UK before?
It's on my bucket list.
Oh, you have to come over.
I will. I have been planning on coming to the UK.
If you're in Vancouver, you'll like the weather over here because it's very similar, isn't it? It's nice and rainy and all that.
Well, funny you say that. Typically, yes. For the past 4 months, we have not had any rain. We're in a severe drought right now.
Yeah.
Severe drought. And I have my eye drops beside me because of the drought and because we have been having record temperatures in October. So we have had really bad fires. Ooh, so I haven't checked today, but our air quality, we are basically in the top 5 for the worst in the world right now for air because of the fires and the drought.
Wow.
So I'm squinting at you guys. The people who are listening can't see, thankfully. But my eyes right now are so dry because of the air and the smoke.
Wow. Because I used to have family in Vancouver, and well, I had family in Vancouver in downtown, and then they moved to North Van, and then
I'm in North Van.
Yeah, which was lovely. It was a great area. And then they moved to. In fact, I remember when they were downtown, I was staying in their apartment, and they were next to the hospital, and the air ambulance came in, this helicopter, and I thought I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I thought we were being invaded by aliens or something. It felt like this helicopter was landing in their apartment. But anyway, but then they moved to Squamish, and then I had family in Whistler as well, so that was great. But I know in like up in North Van, is it Cypress Mountain you've got behind there with all of the trees and all of that sort of stuff? Yeah, it was.
So I've shared some photos from my area, and the mountain that's directly behind me is Grouse Mountain.
Grouse, that's it.
And
yes.
then to the west of Grouse is Cypress.
Yeah.
And you keep going west, and you'll have Squamish, and then there's Whistler, and we typically get a lot of rain. And I think starting on Friday, we need it. We are due for so much rain, but I think it'll probably just be now months of rain.
Yeah. At the end of it, you'll be like, oh. Yeah,
we've had loads of rain. We've had loads and loads of rain today, but now it's quite sunny here actually now in the afternoon as we're sitting here, so that's good. So no, I mean, if you want to come over to the UK and do some workshops, I host people at Unique Results, where we're about half an hour outside of London, and we have lots of people. We've had like Dan John, we do a lot of strong first ones. We've had David Keown over. We've had Rick Brown, Mr. Maceman came over from California. So yeah, we'll definitely have to stay in touch. And
yes, I would love to.
And arrange something.
It could be a pull-up, calisthenics, muscle-ups, push-ups, pistol squats.
Whoa.
Whatever people want, really.
Yeah, we do a whole weekend. That'd be fantastic. That'd be brilliant.
People doing muscle-ups.
And you're just to touch on your pistol squat program. That's one of your newer ones. Yeah. Again, I'll ask the same question. Is that something that came very easy to you, or is that something that you had to learn? And could you do it but not do it particularly tidily, and then you've polished it up, and now you're
For most of the exercises, I consider myself really lucky. I've always been really athletic, and I've always had a fairly high level of strength. I'm not a good 1RM person. I've never enjoyed training 1RM, and probably because I'm not the best at it. But even just an example, trap bar deadlifts, I've done 230. You guys are in kilos, right? We use pounds here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I have done 230 for 15.
Wow.
230 pounds, not kilos.
I was going to say.
That would be really impressive.
But that's about 100. But that's about 100 kilos. Yeah.
Roughly. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's 104.5454 recurring.
Yeah, so 105 kilos for 15.
It was just purely for my own fun.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see how many I could do, and I did 15. I think once I get back, probably not the first time, but I bet I'll be able to do more based on the strength I've gained over the past few years. So for pistol squats, I was able to do them right away, not necessarily well, but what's really interesting is after my car accident and the 5 years of awfulness, really, I had developed so many imbalances throughout my body based on all the compensations. It ended up being severe nerve irritation in my rib area that was causing a lot of problems throughout my entire body. So my right side, my right leg was dramatically weaker than the left. Now, over the past couple of years, and funny enough, once I was forced to do more unilateral training, my strength is pretty much 50-50 left and right, completely even. I can do pistol squats now on the right just as well as I can on the left. Before, I would always shoot videos on the left side because it was so much better. So technically, yes, I could do them right away easily, but not on the right side. So I think my right side was probably like what most people would experience when they were starting out. And the pistol squat program, like all the programs I offer, it's very fundamental, and they're in phases. It's not just one phase. You learn the fundamentals, they're more basic. Each phase, the fundamentals will get progressively more challenging. And in each program, I typically do have some innovative exercises, more the accessory work. But again, they make sense. They help you achieve the goal. And as each phase goes on, these exercises do become more challenging. So it is a blend of fundamental, innovative, that leads you towards the end goal.
Because that's another one I saw of yours recently, which had me almost cramping just watching, was when you were sat at the bottom of a pistol squat, and then with the straight leg, you were kind of lifting it over. Is it a dumbbell or a kettlebell or something? But you were kind of lifting it, and it was for hip flexor work, I think. Yeah.
That was a throwback video. That was a video that I recycled. So that one took a while ago, and I was using, I guess you'd call it just the hurdles people use in the gyms, the mini hurdles.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was using that, and I had 2 of them. So I was going, sorry, people can't see that. I keep forgetting that people are not necessarily watching. I confess, I usually listen. I don't watch as much. So I'd probably be one of the listeners too.
I suppose we should
my leg in multiple directions. That's for the,
I suppose we should just, I'm holding up the hammer again.
Yes.
I suppose, again, we talk about stuff, and I'm conscious of this. I really made an effort because we talk about things that we know what they are, but some listeners won't. Just Meghan, could you just explain in 30 seconds what a pistol squat is, please?
Easiest way for people to picture this: get into the bottom, or get into a deep squat using 2 legs. Lift one leg off the floor. You're going to extend the one leg. You're sitting in a deep squat using the other leg. That's the bottom position of the pistol squat, so they could picture what I was doing in that exercise. But what a pistol squat is, it's a single leg squat where your non-working leg, you're going to keep fully extended. You're going to control, and you're going to lower down to the bottom position of the squat using one leg, and you're standing up using that same leg, keeping the non-working leg fully extended. And people do struggle with this a lot. People of all fitness levels and abilities. It might stem from a lack of mobility. It might stem from a lack of strength. Could potentially be a lack of technique. And this is relevant to all squats, most exercises. When people are lowering, a lot of people do not control the eccentric component, and they just drop down. I almost call it a drop and catch. So if you were barbell squatting, you don't want to just come crashing down to the bottom position of the squat. You want to actually control the lowering. Then you're going to have a much better chance of getting back up. And I hope nobody does. Well, I shouldn't say I hope nobody does, because I know people do use that technique a lot of the time with most exercises, anything where you're having to do an eccentric movement.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think what I was going to say from there on the pistol squat, because pistol squat, again, pull-ups are are something that most people will have seen before. And again, I'm not sure if because I'm moving in different circles now, and because I'm doing this podcast every week, and because we're speaking to people like you every week, it seems that sort of things like pull-ups and pistol squats and, you know, maybe one-arm press-ups and things like that are becoming more and more popular now. But I'm not sure that it's just because I'm almost in an echo chamber of people who do that sort of stuff. I don't. Do you know what I mean, Pete? Because I think if I was,
I know exactly what you mean. Because I mean, basically, my program at the minute is pull-ups, pistols, and presses. That's it. So,
because I think if I was to walk into because I went to Vancouver, I think I told you I went to Vancouver on honeymoon and things, and I trained at like a something Nash Fitness or something.
Oh, Steve, it's a commercial gym chain here.
Yeah.
Although I believe it now, it was renamed.
Ah, okay.
I think Nash wanted out. Do you know who Steve Nash is?
No.
He was an NBA player.
Ah, okay.
You're going to bring out your
Acronym
hammer, so I'll just say it first. The National Basketball Association. And he's from Vancouver Island. He was a really, really, really good basketball player. And he ended up, I don't know if he was involved in the gym. And I think something happened. I forget what. And I think he wanted out.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on this. I don't know the whole situation, but it now is called Fitness World.
Ah, okay. Yeah. So that was a kind of a bit of a detour, because all I was trying to say when I was there, I trained in this Steve Nash Fitness or whatever it's called, like a commercial corporate gym. Yeah. And you go in and it's still all, you know, rows and rows of cardiovascular machines, you know, 50 different resistance machines, pin loaded machines to work every different area of the body. So I think probably the majority of commercial stroke corporate gyms are still like that. But because I kind of, you know, don't really see that side of the industry anymore, I don't know. But for me, it seems like calisthenics and bodyweight training and maybe kettlebells and Indian clubs and maces and more of this unconventional form of training and parallettes like you use and Olympic rings and that sort of thing is more popular. But I don't know if, like I say, I'm just moving in those circles now so I get that reflected back at me all the time. I don't know what you think.
It could be that I'm in an echo chamber too. I see a lot, and I consider I'm in this category too, more the hybrid approach. So I do see a lot of the calisthenics athletes. More coffee time. I do see a lot of those people lifting using the barbell, dumbbells, kettlebells. It's not just body weight. And I do think the exercises with the barbell, with the heavier resistance, obviously does have a good carryover to the calisthenics. But I also think getting good at the body weight exercises is going to have a huge carryover to the exercises using the heavier resistance, the barbell, dumbbell, and so forth. You'll see a lot of people who can squat 500 pounds, but might not be able to do a pistol squat. People who can do pistol squats, I'm not saying they can squat 500 pounds, but if you were to put a bar on their back, they probably would have an okay time squatting. Again, don't quote me. It doesn't happen 100% of the time. But I do think that the calisthenics has a huge carryover to the exercises using barbells, dumbbells, trap bar, and so forth. Yeah,
well, I think I agree. I was going to say I agree with that. I think the crossover is certainly it's almost undoubtable that there is a crossover one way, but there's not such an immediate crossover the other way, because you can like you say, deadlift 200 kilos or something doesn't mean that you can even necessarily do one pull-up, you know. So I bet then there's the whole absolute strength, relative strength kind of thing. But yeah, I do think that having that control of your body, isn't it? And being able
I was just going to say that being able to control your body has such a huge carryover, because you need to be able to control the body. A lot of people, you see them, they put an empty bar on their back. They're working sets. They might be squatting a lot of weight. They shouldn't be. You see them put the bar on their back, an empty bar, and they struggle to control the bar because they're not able to control their body weight. You look at what the feet are doing. The feet, they don't have the tripod. They're not able to stabilize. Their knees might not be stable. They might not be able to control their hips. They might lack the lumbar pelvic stability. There are so many different factors, and getting good at the body weight stuff has a huge carryover.
I suppose it's kind of body weight control and strength, but it's also body weight awareness, isn't it? And
Yes.
spatial awareness and proprioception and all those sort of things that you get through really owning your body and your body movement.
Yeah. That's why all my programs, they do combine, even if it's a body weight goal, for example, a pull-up, you're going to still see exercises with dumbbells. In my pull-up program, it is very adaptable, but I even include some landmine exercises in there.
Yeah. You wanted to say something, Pete? Sorry.
I've been trying to say something for the last 10 minutes.
I jumped in and then he's putting his...
I'm trying, like, hang on. No, it was just because I've been doing a lot of pistol squats over the last year and a half or so, weighted ones. And it's funny what you said there about that, because doing like double leg squats, a squat with a barbell on your back and stuff like that. There's you can like you were saying earlier, Megan, you can have you had one leg which was way stronger than the other after your accident and all of that. You can compensate for that during if you're doing a bilateral squat, so a double leg squat before you get your hammer out. But you can be shifting to one side, so you're actually making one leg stronger while the other one stays the same and all that. So you can compensate for all that when you're on two legs. You can't do that in a pistol squat, can you? It's you have to be able to do it on that one side.
Yeah.
And what I find really fascinating about it is you need the mobility to be able to do it. You can get away with I'm going to say poor mobility, whatever. They're not the requisite mobility to be able to do a squat. But for a pistol squat, you can't, because I've had people comment on mine like, does that not really hurt your knees and stuff? It's like, well, no, because it's my hip that's doing the work. My ankle's got the mobility. The tension is there. It's fine. My knees are absolutely fine. No problem whatsoever. But this is another thing from what James was saying in commercial gyms or whatever. People might see someone do that and go, I'll never be able to do that because this hurts, that hurts, whatever. And there might be a condition for that, but a lot of the time it is just having that mobility. And then this is where I get to, like, with people thinking you have to do mobility all the time. And it's like, but if you're training the pistol squat, that mobility is there. If it goes away, you can't train the pistol squat. So it's actually quite self-fulfilling. So it hits a lot of areas, I think, because I find my hip mobility, I'm not saying it's amazing, but I'm 46 years old and most people can't get into the positions that I can get into with my hips, basically, who are my age. So I just find that really interesting that you can, when you're doing something and you've got like an external source that you can brace against as well, you can really compensate all over the place. So that's a good one for people. If someone is listening to this who is lifting heavy and getting niggles here and there and can't work out why, then this is the sort of area to look into, the unilateral side and also the body weight. So to figure out where the blockage is, where the issue is, and then you can take that valve away, and then all of a sudden, everything else feels better, doesn't it?
A lot of people don't do enough unilateral training. They might just squat with two legs bilaterally. The second even with clients, a great way, I'm not huge on assessments. But I love to assess clients by having them do basic movement patterns. And so the clients are technically working out all the while I'm assessing them without making them feel like they're completely broken, fragile. And they feel like they're getting a workout without me just like nitpicking and over analyzing. So a great way to expose, I don't want to say the word expose because it makes somebody feel like I'm judging. But if having somebody do a split squat, for example, will tell me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody might be able to squat a lot of weight with two legs. But then if I get them into a split squat or a skater squat, something like that exposes a lot. Yeah. It tells me a lot of what I need to know when I'm putting together their programs, if somebody might be having potential aches and pains somewhere, if that's something I don't think I know, if it's outside of my lane, or outside of my lane or scope of practice, I'm going to, of course, refer them to somebody. But a lot of the time I can see what I need to see based on these simple workout / assessments. And the unilateral work is so telling.
I love that, because I've done and James has, I know you have as well, done stuff in the past for like assessments and what have you. And I don't tend to use them myself because like you say, it's kind of like, right, try and get into this position, you need to do it. And the person's like, I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm broken. And it's like, so like you say, you do it surreptitiously and they don't even realize what's going on. So I get that with people. I'll do kind of, you know, when you do cross crawls, you get one elbow to one knee, but I'll get them to go and do a lunge back afterwards.
Yeah.
One side, they'll lunge back. The other side, the back leg will be over here somewhere. And it's like, right, so that means that your opposite hip it thinks that's straight when it's not. So like little things like that, they didn't even know they're doing it. And they go, God, it feels much more wobbly on that side. And it's like, that's because your feet are in line. And that's hard to stand like that. You haven't got them hip width apart. So it's really interesting. Then when you actually do get them to put their feet in line, they feel like their foot's kind of over here somewhere, don't they? It's the whole proprioception thing James was talking about. So I love that because it puts it. I don't know. People never feel fooled about it, do they? When you actually, and you don't necessarily say, here's what's happening, but you explain, okay, do you find, is there like an issue in this hip, or do you have like a sore lower back somewhere or whatever, based on that? And then they go, yeah, and then you can start to gain the confidence of like, right, I can help with that because there's a reason for it, and you can see it in your movement.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that.
It's fun assessing people without actually assessing them. Yeah. And it takes a lot of years of experience. I'm sure you guys can relate. But as you've become more experienced and more proficient, it is really easy to assess people, but while making it just a workout. You pick the variation of the movement that is best suited to them. You can adapt on the fly. You can catch things that need to be addressed, but without making them feel like they're completely broken.
Absolutely.
And in the commercial, or not the commercial gyms, in the personal training studios I used to train out of, some of the trainers would be doing the assessments with their clients. And I was just covering my eyes. You could see how the poor clients, they felt like they were just broken.
Yeah.
They weren't working out. They weren't doing anything really other than being nitpicked. All these supposed weaknesses and imbalances. And if anybody told you that, you would feel like a total basket case. And it would completely, at least when I was going through a lot of the stuff after my car accident, I had different physios assessing me. Some were good, most were awful. They made me feel like I was a complete, I was going to say the F word, but I was a complete fuck up.
Yeah.
And I was scared to simply breathe. And I ended up finding out, once I found 5 years later, the person who helped me, literally everything all the other doctors had told me was completely wrong. I was told I'd never be able to squat again. I was told I was tight here, weak here. Oh, you're so unstable, which I'm hesitant. I don't like using that word either. I was told I had one leg that was shorter than the other, which was also incorrect. I was literally told every possible thing that could be wrong with me was. And so it has made me hyper aware of the language I use when I'm with my clients, and also how damaging certain assessments can be. You can completely, I don't want to say trick people into assessing them, but you can just literally train them while being mindful, of course, and see what you need to see. And I don't want to say it's so easy, but really after all these years, it typically is.
Yeah, I mean, I've moved away from, I did like the FMS, you know, the functional movement screen. Great.
That was the one I was thinking about. A lot of the people I saw doing that.
Yeah. So I did the level 1 and the level 2 of that, and I do think it's got place sometimes. But most of the people who start with us, like you say, I could almost look at them and know, and certainly look at them if they start doing some movements and some training. I think, well, they're not going to be able to do that. I know they're not going to be. They're going to struggle with that. This is going to be really difficult. Let's just not do that, and let's, like you say, just put in some other movement stuff, because there was a method called ground force method that came off the back of the functional movement screen, which is more like movement flow based bodyweight stuff. And that way you can use it almost like a warm up, and you can almost look and see the movements and the the assessments without going through this full assessment where they've got to have a dowel on their back and everything be in perfect line, and they've got to be balanced, and they've got to, you know, so yeah, that's not saying I never use the FMS, but I think for the majority of people, certainly when people are new and when they come in and when they maybe don't feel great to begin with and they're not confident and they just want help with something, I think, like you say, just nitpicking and highlighting all the things that they can't do is not the best way to kind of start off a relationship, you know, to build confidence moving forward.
That's like going out with someone on a first date, isn't it? And telling them everything, like, right, here's what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
But it's all right because we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
And also, most people are not perfectly symmetrical.
Yes.
Pretty much nobody is perfectly symmetrical. So nitpicking and being like, oh, you're not quite even on this side, or when you squat, your one foot points out a little bit more than the other. We need to fix this. Guess what? Some people actually... Do you know Dean Somerset?
I don't know.
If not, I recommend following him. He's awesome. He's made different posts about this, talking about stances, for example, squats, deadlifts. Everybody, you're going to have a different stance from the next person. Just because somebody might squat better with their feet pointing out a bit, that's normal. Somebody might do well with their feet straight ahead. One person might have one foot that's pointing out a tiny bit more than the other. That's also potentially normal for that person. So going around, and back in my earlier days, I know I did do this when people were not squatting with their feet perfectly symmetrical, whether or not they were straight or pointing out, I would correct them. Looking back, I know that was a complete mess up on my part.
I did a video on this a while ago because there's a guy who comes to see me who, it's really interesting. He's really tall. He's like 6'4" or something like that. He's really tall, but his body's the same. I'm like about a foot smaller than him, put it that way, but his body's the same size as mine. He's all legs. So and he's got really long arms as well, so pressing for him, he has to go a long way and stuff like that. But doing anything like with a kettlebell, getting it in the rack position and holding it, his pelvis is right there. So he can do that. He can stand there all day, no problem, which some people with shorter arms will worry about in like longer bodies. And his wife comes to me as well, and she said it's hilarious because he's much taller than her, but when they're sitting down at dinner, they're the same height. So it's just like lots of, and I was saying about different limb lengths, different, even not limbs, different, like, you know, people with long femurs are better at deadlifting than squatting, and just general things like that. And it's, everybody has got, Mark Rifkind, you see him when he finishes a kettlebell swing, the kettlebell scrapes the floor, because Mark Rifkind, when he stands upright, his arms are pretty much down to his knees. He's got really long arms. I remember him saying that at the
he's only about 5'4" as well, isn't he?
And he's not very tall. So deadlifts for him were brilliant because he didn't have to, you know, his arms were like really long. So it's just, I find that fascinating because you can get, I'm going to say it, you get your technique Nazis, don't you? And it's like, it's fair enough. Technique has to be good, otherwise you might hurt yourself, but it's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yes, that's the other thing. Not all form will be alike for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, there's obviously glaring mistakes you need to avoid, but not everybody is going to have identical form. And even Mark, the guy that you were just talking about, for him, pull-ups would be tougher. If he has really long arms, he's going to find pull-ups tougher.
You say that he was a competitive gymnast in his younger days, so he probably finds them all right.
Maybe not him then, but just somebody else.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'll tell you what, Meghan, we better start wrapping up now, because I know we came on with you, and we really appreciate you giving your time in the morning, and hopefully you've nearly finished your coffee now, so you're just hitting form. You're kind of wide awake now.
I'll be awake probably in an hour. And I've been up for a while. I've actually been up for a while, but just
you said you were cycling before. Did you cycle indoors or outdoors before this?
I bought a spin bike.
Ah, excellent. Yeah.
So I cycled indoors. I joke I have allergy brain right now from the whole fires and everything. So it's a combo of being early and just the allergies.
Yeah.
I'll be awake in about an hour.
Okay. If people, well, first of all, Pete, is there anything before I start to wrap up? Is there any final thoughts or questions? I think we've been kind of covered.
No, I think that last like bit we've just talked about everyone's different. I mean, this is one of the things, isn't it? When you talk about assessments and that, you treat the Perry Nicholson said this when he walked in, when he walked in, when he was on the podcast, and you treat the human that walks in front of you, the individual, because everyone's an individual. And okay, people do fall in. You can kind of then start to go, oh well, that would usually be this, and you can go down different routes, but everyone walks in as an individual in the very beginning. So I just think that's really important. And it's really important for listeners to know that the listeners who aren't coaches and what have you, who are maybe seeking out coaches and everything, that's what you want to be treated like when you go in as well. Not like you have to do it exactly like this because everyone else does. It's like, no, we'll work out what works for you and we'll do that. So just to be mindful of that as well.
Excellent. So Meghan, if people want to, I'd highly recommend they do, and I'm sure they will after listening to you talk today. If people want to follow you, find out more about your programs, about what you do, what's the best kind of channel or network for people to first kind of come and follow you and see what you do? Where do you want people to go?
Probably the best two spots, my website, MeghanCallawayFitness.com, and then Instagram, Meghan Callaway Fitness.
Excellent. And yeah, like I say, both Pete and myself have followed Meghan for a long time. She's absolutely, certainly the I know it depends on your kind of your preferred method of following people, but Instagram is very visual, obviously, which is fantastic to do there. Thanks so much for joining us, Meghan. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you this morning for you, this afternoon for us. And I'll definitely stay in touch, because if you do feel like coming over to the UK, we'll definitely set something up, like a weekend workshop or something with you. Would be great. And I'm sure we'll get lots of people interested in that over here. That would be great. Brilliant. So thank you, everybody, for listening, for watching. Please do share, like, subscribe, leave a review if you're listening on a platform that allows you to do so. I think you can leave reviews on Spotify now as well as iTunes. So please do leave us reviews. There is the Facebook group as well. Just go on Facebook into groups, search Health Oddity, and join there, and Pete will let you in, or one of us will let you in. If we see you knocking on the door, we'll let you into the group. We will be back next week. I think we've got Adam Meekins on next week with us, and we should have Paul back, shouldn't we? We should have Mr. Paul Bassett back with us.
He better be.
Next week as well. Yeah, Meghan, it's been an absolute pleasure, and it's just you're someone I feel like we could talk all day, and it's just really, really lovely for you to share your story. And like I say, everybody, check out Meghan's website, check out Meghan's Instagram, check out all the programs that she does, and hopefully sometime in the future we will get Meghan over to the UK and do a live in-person workshop as well, which would be fantastic. So say goodbye, Mr. Peter Lance.
Ta-ra.
What did you say?
Ta-ra.
Oh, I thought you said that.
Yeah. Say goodbye, Meghan.
I'm learning Swedish right now, so I'll say it in Swedish. Hey da.
Hey da.
I don't know if my accent was quite on par, but
we have had a Swede on here, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
Stina was a Swede.
They can nitpick my accent.
Is a Swede. And I will say goodbye. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.